The story of Oliver Hardy is not the one you think you know. Behind the laughter, behind the iconic films with Stan Laurel, stood a man whose life ended in tragedy. His once grand home now stands abandoned, his fortune dwindled, and his final years marked by heartbreak that shocked even his closest friends. How did one of Hollywood's most beloved comedians go from worldwide fame to being almost unrecognizable in his final days? Why did rumors swirl about a secret illness? And what legacy did he truly leave behind? Stay with us as we uncover the rise, the fall, and the haunting truth about Oliver Hardy's abandoned house, his devoted wife, and the tragic death that silenced a comedy legend forever. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories, because what you're about to hear will change the way you remember Oliver Hardy. When audiences thought of Oliver Hardy, they pictured the jovial half of the world's most famous comedy duo. Alongside Stan Laurel, he was Babe, the lovable clown who could turn a simple glance or stumble into pure magic. But while moviegoers saw a man who seemed to live for laughter, Hardy's private life told a far different story. Off-screen, Hardy carried burdens that fame could never erase. His size, which became part of his charm on stage, was also a lifelong source of struggle. The very thing that helped define his comedic persona was the same thing that weighed heavily on him in private. He laughed it off in public, but friends knew he worried about his health, and the years of indulgence would eventually prove costly. His personal life wasn't always smooth either. Hardy endured 2 failed marriages before finding lasting companionship with Lucille, his 3rd wife. To the outside world, he seemed endlessly cheerful. Yet in private moments, he often wrestled with loneliness and disappointment. Unlike the characters he played, Hardy couldn't always bounce back from the blows life dealt him. And yet, when the cameras rolled, none of that pain showed. Hardy approached every performance with meticulous care, as though he knew the world depended on his ability to make them laugh. His expressive face, his timing, and his signature slow-burn glare made him a legend. But behind the laughter was a man fighting battles the audience would never see. This contradiction-beloved star on screen, weary soul often defined Oliver Hardy's life. And before long, the cracks in that double life began to show, not through scandal, but through something far more human: the slow collapse of his health. By the early 1950s, Oliver Hardy's body was beginning to show the strain of decades in the spotlight. Off-screen, his habits, rich meals, heavy drinking, and an endless stream of cigarettes were catching up with him. He was beloved for his larger-than-life presence, but that same size put his health in constant jeopardy. In May 1954, Hardy suffered a mild heart attack. For the first time, he was forced to confront what he had long ignored. His health was failing. Doctors warned him that unless he changed his ways, his career, and possibly his life, would be cut short. The wake-up call was impossible to ignore. Determined to fight back, Hardy began a strict weight loss program. The transformation was dramatic. Within months, he shed more than 150 pounds. Fans who saw him were stunned. The once robust comedian, famous for his size and presence, looked almost like a stranger. For some, it was inspiring to see him attempt a healthier path. But for others, the sudden change was unsettling. Rumors swirled that the weight loss wasn't just dieting whispers of a secret illness. Even cancer spread quickly in Hollywood. Stan Laurel, who watched over his partner with protective concern, quietly admitted in letters that he feared Hardy was hiding something serious. Whether true or not, the speculation only added to the tragic aura surrounding Hardy's decline. The cruel irony was that Hardy's efforts to save himself only deepened public concern. His weight loss had stripped him of the very presence that defined his comedy. Once admired for his booming personality and physical humor, Hardy now appeared fragile, diminished, and tired. For fans who loved him, it was a painful transformation to witness. But this was only the beginning. Hardy had won a temporary reprieve, yet a devastating blow was still ahead, one that would silence his voice forever. On September 14, 1956, Oliver Hardy's world changed forever. The man who had spent his life making others laugh was struck by a massive stroke. In an instant, he lost much of his speech, his mobility, and his independence. For someone whose career depended on expression and timing, the blow was devastating. Friends who visited in the months after were heartbroken. The once robust comedian who had commanded stages and cameras was now frail, struggling even to communicate. His signature slow-burn glare, his playful mannerisms, the little touches of genius that defined him were suddenly out of reach. To see Hardy silenced felt cruel, as though fate itself had stripped him of the very tools that made him immortal. Through it all, one person never wavered: his wife, Lucille. Married to Hardy since 1940, she became his caretaker and constant companion. Day after day, she nursed him with quiet devotion, preparing meals, managing his medicine, and shielding him from pity. While the outside world saw a fallen star, Lucille saw the man she loved, and she was determined to give him dignity in his decline. Stan Laurel, too, was shaken. He rarely spoke publicly about Hardy's suffering, but privately admitted it was agonizing to watch his partner's decline. The two had been inseparable for decades, sharing not just the stage, but a bond that went deeper than friendship. For Laurel, seeing Hardy trapped in silence was almost unbearable. The stroke marked the beginning of the end. Hardy's spirit remained strong, but his body continued to betray him. He had survived one collapse, but fate had far more heartbreak in store. Within a year, his condition would grow worse, leading to the tragic final chapter of his life. After his first stroke, Oliver Hardy never fully recovered. His health continued to falter, and by the summer of 1957, his body could no longer withstand the strain. In early August, he was struck by 2 more strokes in rapid succession. This time, there would be no comeback. Hardy slipped into a coma, and on August 7, 1957, he passed away at just 65 years old. The official cause was cerebral thrombosis, a blood clot in the brain, but to his fans, it felt like the sudden loss of laughter itself. Hollywood mourned the passing of one of its most beloved icons, but no one felt the loss more deeply than Stan Laurel. For over 30 years, Laurel and Hardy had been inseparable, bound not just by their careers, but by a genuine brotherhood. Laurel was devastated, yet his grief was so overwhelming that his doctor warned him not to attend the funeral. The risk to his already fragile health was simply too great. When asked why he stayed away, Laurel's response was quiet but unforgettable. Babe would understand. Those 4 words captured everything about their partnership, an unspoken bond built on respect, love, and understanding that even death could not sever. Hardy's remains were cremated, and his ashes placed in the Masonic Garden at Valhalla Memorial Park Cemetery in North Hollywood. Fans and colleagues alike paid tribute, recalling not just his comic brilliance, but also his kindness and humility. For Laurel, however, the loss was final. He never performed again, choosing instead to live quietly, carrying the weight of Hardy's absence for the rest of his life. The world had lost a comedy legend, but Hardy's story was far from finished. To understand how far he had come, one must look back to his beginnings in the small towns of Georgia, where a mischievous boy first discovered the power of laughter. Oliver Hardy's journey began far from the glittering lights of Hollywood. Born Norval Hardy on January 18, 1892, in Harlem, Georgia, his life was marked by hardship from the start. His father, a respected Confederate veteran, died only months after Oliver's birth, leaving his mother, Emily, to raise the family alone. That early loss forged a bond between mother and son that would remain unbreakable throughout his life. Emily supported her children by running boarding houses in small Georgia towns like Madison and Milledgeville. These homes, filled with traveling salesmen, railroad workers, and drifters, became a stage for young Oliver. While others might have seen the daily chaos as ordinary, Hardy quietly studied the characters who came and went, their accents, gestures, and quirks. Without realizing it, he was building the foundation of the comedic genius he would one day display on screen. School never interested him. Teachers grew frustrated with his lack of focus, calling him mischievous and restless. But Hardy was drawn instead to music and performance. He had a warm baritone voice that locals admired, and he occasionally sang in events, earning praise for his natural talent. More importantly, he discovered that laughter was powerful, able to charm, diffuse tension, and even turn teasing about his size into applause. Life in small-town Georgia was far from easy. Poverty loomed over many families, and opportunities were limited. Yet Hardy's humor and his imposing frame set him apart. His size, often the subject of jokes, became something he learned to use to his advantage. With every mimicry of a guest at his mother's boarding house or comic imitation of a local townsman, Oliver was shaping the persona that would later captivate the world. By his teenage years, Hardy was restless. He loved his mother deeply, but he longed for a stage bigger than Georgia could offer. That restless energy would eventually drive him toward vaudeville, and soon, the bright lights of cinema. As Oliver Hardy entered adulthood, it was clear that small-town Georgia couldn't hold him. Though restless in school, he was captivated by performance. He began singing in local theaters and even providing live accompaniment to silent films. His deep baritone voice and imposing stage presence set him apart, but it was comedy that truly drew him in. By the 1910s, Hardy was appearing in silent shorts, often as comic villains, policemen, or bumbling foils. He quickly became a familiar face, and by the 1920s, he had racked up appearances in over 200 films, an extraordinary output, even if his name wasn't yet known worldwide. The turning point came when Hardy joined Hal Roach Studios, where fate paired him with an English comic named Stan Laurel. At first, they were just two performers in a crowded cast, but whenever they shared a scene, the chemistry was undeniable. Hardy's exasperated glare and physical presence blended seamlessly with Laurel's innocent, wide-eyed bumbling. The effect was so natural, so funny, that audiences demanded more. By 1927, the duo had officially become Laurel and Hardy. Their silent shorts charmed audiences, but it was the arrival of sound that elevated them into legends. While other silent stars struggled with the transition, Laurel and Hardy thrived. Their voices were as distinctive as their appearances. Laurel's high-pitched, hesitant delivery paired perfectly with Hardy's deep, commanding tone. Together, they became a global sensation. Throughout the 1930s, their films Sons of the Desert, Way Out West, and countless shorts cemented their place in comedy history. Their humor was universal, rooted in human flaws, small frustrations, and the absurdities of everyday life. Audiences didn't just laugh at them. They saw themselves reflected in the duo's misadventures. By the end of the decade, Hardy had gone from a mischievous boy in Georgia to one of Hollywood's most beloved comedians. But with fame came fortune, and with fortune came a new chapter life among Hollywood's elite in Beverly Hills. By the mid-1930s, Oliver Hardy had reached the peak of his career. Laurel and Hardy were international stars, their films adored across the globe. With fame came fortune, and Hardy marked his success by moving with his wife, Lucille, into a grand home on Alta Drive in Beverly Hills, one of the most prestigious addresses in Los Angeles. The house, designed in the Spanish colonial revival style, reflected both elegance and comfort. White stucco walls, red tile roofing, and manicured gardens framed the life Hardy had built far from his modest Georgia beginnings. For him and Lucille, the home wasn't just a residence, it was a sanctuary, a symbol of how far he had come. The Alta Drive home became a gathering place for Hollywood friends. Hardy was known for his warmth and generosity, welcoming guests with music, fine meals, and laughter. Stan Laurel, though quieter and more reserved, was a frequent visitor. Their bond extended beyond the screen, and evenings at Hardy's house often included brainstorming sessions, conversations about future projects, or simply moments of friendship between two men who had shared their lives for decades. Unlike many stars of his time, Hardy never lost his approachable charm. Neighbors and guests recalled that he treated everyone with kindness, never allowing fame to distance him from ordinary people. With Lucille by his side, he found stability after earlier failed marriages, and together they built a home filled with warmth rather than pretension. During these years, Laurel and Hardy thrived in sound cinema, releasing classics like Sons of the Desert and Way Out West. As their reputation grew, Hardy's Beverly Hills home stood as a reminder that he had truly arrived among Hollywood's elite. Yet the glitter of Beverly Hills was only one chapter. Soon, Hardy would seek something larger, more extravagant, a Sherman Oaks estate that reflected not just his success, but his love for entertaining. By the late 1930s, Oliver Hardy and his wife, Lucille, sought more space and privacy than Beverly Hills could offer. Their answer was a sprawling estate on Magnolia Street in Sherman Oaks, an emerging haven for Hollywood stars who wanted luxury without the constant glare of the city. For Hardy, the move marked not just prosperity, but a chance to create a true entertainer's paradise. The estate was impressive. Landscaped gardens, a sparkling swimming pool, and a guest house that made hosting friends effortless. There were even stables on the property, reflecting Hardy's appreciation for horseback riding and the valley's semi-rural charm. For a man who had grown up in modest Georgia boarding houses, this was a world away proof of how far he had traveled in life and career. The swimming pool quickly became the centerpiece of Hardy's social life. At a time when private pools were still rare, gatherings in his home felt like something special. Friends and colleagues from the film industry often visited, enjoying lively parties where laughter and conversation flowed as easily as the drinks. Unlike some stars who flaunted their success, Hardy's hospitality was genuine. He wanted people to feel welcome, and his warmth left an impression on everyone who visited. Stan Laurel was a frequent guest, and the bond between the two men extended beyond work. Evenings at the estate often blended business and pleasure, casual brainstorming for gags, reminiscing about past triumphs or simply enjoying each other's company away from studio pressure. Architecturally, the home struck a balance between elegance and comfort, with Spanish Revival touches and rustic details that gave it character. Much like Hardy himself, it was grand without being pretentious. The Magnolia Street estate symbolized not just wealth, but generosity and friendship. Yet as the years passed, Hardy's life would take a quieter turn. The grand parties and expansive grounds gave way to something far more modest, a Hollywood apartment that mirrored both the fading glamour of the era and Hardy's own declining health. In the twilight of his life, Oliver Hardy's surroundings were a far cry from the grandeur of Beverly Hills or his Sherman Oaks estate. His final years were spent at the Hillview Apartments on Hollywood Boulevard, a building rich with history but faded in glory. Once built by Paramount co-founder Jesse Lasky in 1917, the Hillview had been a haven for actors chasing fame. Legends like Stan Laurel, Clara Bow, and even a young Humphrey Bogart had once passed through its halls. By the time Hardy lived there, the building's luster had dimmed. The Mediterranean Revival architecture still carried charm, but age and decline were undeniable. For Hardy, who had once entertained the world from lavish estates, this modest residence symbolized a quieter chapter. To some, it seemed like a fall from grace. To others, it was simply a man choosing dignity and simplicity in his final years. The symbolism was haunting. Just as the Hillview had faded from its glamorous beginnings, Hardy too was in decline. weakened by illness and stripped of the vitality that had defined his comedy. Fans who later discovered his final residence often described it as a metaphor for Hollywood itself, a place where stars burned brightly, only to fade into shadows. After Hardy's passing, the homes he once owned became part of his story. The Beverly Hills house and Sherman Oaks estate were sold, altered, or left to decay. Over time, rumors swirled that Hardy's former homes had been abandoned, creating an eerie legacy of neglect. While not all of these stories were true, the image of Oliver Hardy's abandoned house persisted, a haunting contrast to the joy he had given the world. Yet, even as walls crumbled and rumors spread, Hardy's true legacy never faded. His films remained alive, his laughter preserved on celluloid. What he left behind was far greater than property. It was the timeless gift of joy. When Oliver Hardy died in 1957, many wondered what fortune he had left behind. After decades of international success, lavish homes, and global fame, fans imagined a vast estate. But the reality was more modest. Unlike modern Hollywood contracts, Hardy's era rarely guaranteed lifetime wealth. Much of his earnings were spent on homes, travel, and the generosity he was known for. The fate of his homes told its own story. His Beverly Hills residence and his sprawling Sherman Oaks estate eventually passed into other hands. Over time, they were remodeled, neglected, or forgotten. These changes, along with rumors of decay, fueled the haunting image of Hardy's abandoned house. Yet while the properties faded, his impact endured. Hardy's true fortune lay in his legacy. His hometown of Harlem, Georgia, has preserved his memory through the Laurel and Hardy Museum, where visitors can explore his early life and see artifacts that connect them to the boy who grew up in modest boarding houses before capturing the world stage. The town takes pride in its role as Hardy's birthplace, ensuring that his story isn't lost to time. Most enduring of all is the work Hardy left behind. The films he made with Stan Laurel remain timeless, drawing laughter from audiences nearly a century after they were first released. Their humor transcended language and culture, built on simple truths about human nature, frustration, friendship, and resilience. Measured in dollars, Hardy's estate may not have seemed extraordinary, but measured in joy, it was priceless. His true net worth was in the millions who still smile at his work, proving that even as houses crumble and decades pass, laughter never fades. Oliver Hardy's life was filled with contrasts. To millions, he was the beloved comedian whose bumbling charm with Stan Laurel defined an era of joy. Yet away from the spotlight, his story was marked by fragile health, personal struggles, and the quiet reality that even legends cannot escape time. He gave laughter to the world, but carried burdens that few ever saw. His abandoned houses and fading estates have fueled stories of decline, reminders of how quickly fame can vanish. Hollywood is built on illusions, and Hardy's life proved that even its brightest stars are not untouchable. He indulged in success, suffered the price of neglecting his health, and in the end, passed away far too soon. But to reduce him to tragedy alone would be a mistake. Hardy's true legacy was not measured in property or wealth. It was measured in the joy he created and the bond he shared with those closest to him. His wife, Lucille, stood loyally by his side when illness silenced him. His partner, Stan Laurel, mourned him so deeply that he never performed again. And audiences, generation after generation, continued to rediscover the magic of Laurel and Hardy's timeless comedy. Even in his final days, when illness robbed him of speech, Hardy's legacy spoke louder than ever. A single look into the camera, a sigh of exasperation, or the comic rhythm of his movements. These remain immortal, preserved on film for the world to enjoy. Few entertainers can claim such permanence. So as we look back on Oliver Hardy's story, let's remember more than the abandoned homes or rumors of wealth lost. Let's remember the man who turned human flaws into laughter, who transformed his own struggles into art, and whose humor continues to unite audiences nearly a century later. What do you think of Oliver Hardy's remarkable life? Was it triumph, tragedy, or both? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories.